Hey, friends. Welcome back to the Freedom Equation podcast. My name is Michaela Bell.
And I'm Scott.
Today, we're going to be talking about 5 surprising benefits of having hobbies as a business owner or entrepreneur.
A lot of people. Why don't a lot of people have more hobbies?
I mean, we have a lot.
Well, we do now.
Well, it's because.
But I feel like we've learned it. We've learned the importance of it. Like, people are just so busy, they don't. Everything's like business.
Yeah,
It's like, I work, I have family.
Yeah.
That's it. You gotta just do stuff just because.
100%.
That's what we want to talk about today.
For sure. I remember the first time that I decided to become a fitness instructor. I taught Bar 3 for a couple of years. And the people that I was in business with asked me questions like, "Oh, are you no longer doing your business?" I'm like, why does me having a 10-hour a week like a hobby mean I'm not like?
People ask me that all the time.
What
are
is
you still
that?
doing this? Yep. How about this? Yep. How about this? How do you do all that? Well, how do you not? I have to be able to. But what we're going to talk about more though is actually like hobbies that aren't business opportunities.
True.
Because that's the thing too that has been hard for me is navigating that. Everything I do has to have a reason.
Yeah.
Has to be a potential side hustle.
Right.
Has to be a potential income opportunity.
Right.
And what we want to encourage is the fact that what we're going to talk about and hobbies we're going to talk about are just why they're beneficial to have ones that maybe are totally out of your business realm. So 5 things we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Stress relief, creativity, networking, balance, personal growth. Let's get into it. Number 1, go.
Stress relief.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. So one of the things I really love to do, I guess you can call it a hobby of mine, is I like lettering. And for me, it is very much so a stress reliever. And the first time, I'm not necessarily like an artist
right.
by any means, but when my senior year of college, I was taking 18 credits. I was planning a wedding, and I had to take a random elective, and drawing was the only thing that was left. So I ended up having this drawing class, and during the most stress-filled year so far of like my college life, that drawing class, it was almost, I could almost cry thinking about like walking into that room. It was therapy for me.
Crazy.
And I was so bad at it. I was not a good artist, but it literally was the time, those couple hours in that class, it was as if the stress like melted away in those couple hours.
Yep, definitely stress relief. I mean, that's a huge thing because there are things that knowing that creates stress relief for you and that it actually helps is something that you can tell yourself when you need to relieve some stress. What do you do? And that's kind of, the whole point with all this too is some of the hobbies and things we're going to talk about in these 5 benefits, I think a lot of people don't realize what kind of benefits come from it. And they just look at it like, I don't have time for a hobby. Well, but you may actually become more productive with the stuff that you're doing by taking 15 minutes away to do something that doesn't have to do rather than thinking that your brain can just somehow plow through an 8-hour workday.
Yeah.
And stress relief is a huge one. And in this day and age, it's one of the most important.
For sure.
Just
stress,
getting away.
getting away. Yeah. I always say like stress is a puppet master. So when you don't have things in your life that help you to relieve your stress is the thing that is in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
So you have to have, and you get to have things to do. And like you said, it doesn't have to be something where it takes up an entire Saturday or too much of your time. And that's definitely one of the things that I do. If I'm feeling a lot of stress, if I'm feeling myself becoming like anxious or overwhelmed, I have hobbies that I love to go to that I know will melt away some of that stress.
100%. Number 2, creativity. Boost creativity. This for me is a huge one. So I started this year. We talked about it, I think, in maybe episode 1, or I don't remember. Go back and listen to it. It's about goals, I think. And for me, I decided to start playing piano, not because I want to be a master piano player, and naturally I'm a musician, so it's in that realm, but the whole side of it is just something that challenges me with no real objective. And because of that, anytime that I am just feeling like I'm stuck and
Mhm.
need a creativity boost or just I need to refresh my brain,
Mhm.
I'll just kind of sit down, play the very few little things I know, maybe pop
Mhm.
up on a lesson and try something, but it just makes me turn off the previous thing,
Mhm.
refresh, it kind of gets recharged,
Yep.
and then I come back and get
Mhm.
back to work, and
Mhm.
it usually helps me a ton with creativity
Absolutely.
because it kind of just I specifically try to do it when I'm about to change tasks too at times, where if I'm going
Mm.
from this part of my day to this part of my day, I make that kind of the refresher. It's like if you go sample wines, right? There's always
Yeah.
water that you drink between the wines to
Yeah.
cleanse your palate.
Yep.
It's a palate cleanser.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I just came up
You,
with
I
that.
just,
How
you
about that?
just came up with that
But
right there.
that's kind of how I look at it. Is that that's where I look at it as it's not necessarily always every hour at this amount of time.
Right.
It's more just I can sometimes go 3 hours straight working and be grooving.
Mhm.
Other times I'm like, man, I'm just stuck.
Yeah.
Just sit down, play a
Yep.
little piano, maybe do something else.
And that's exactly what it does. It sparks creativity in your mind. So, let's say you have your job, whatever that might look like for you, whether you're an entrepreneur or in the corporate world and you've got a side hustle. Your your brain is like constantly thinking about work. And so when you start and you engage in a habit,
A happy habit.
hobby.
This is an unedited podcast,
Oh,
people.
wow.
Okay.
It gives your brain space
Mm-hmm.
to let creativity flow. Because like when you're in the grind of work,
Yeah.
your brain doesn't have a lot of space.
Yep. Yep.
So I think that's why that helps with the creativity. Like you think of some of my most creative ideas have come in the shower
Yeah. Exactly.
or when I'm walking. It's because your brain has the space
Yep.
to think about
100%.
all those other things. So that's exactly what hobbies or habits.
You know
or
they make whiteboards
hobbies.
now for the
Yeah.
shower.
Yeah.
Just for that, I think that exact reason. Like,
Mhm.
just 100%. I started for those that don't know. I have a pressure washing company now,
Mm-hmm.
and I usually come up with so many business things and opportunities and stuff because I am just doing the work, which is I find so satisfying to do.
Yeah.
Hence the name. And so it's just I totally relate to that. There's times that just the mindless work
Yes.
makes you actually
Yes.
think about stuff because you can only really think about so many other things when you're doing the actual work you're doing.
Correct.
Really good.
I love that.
What's another
One
one?
is networking. So
Totally.
it provides you just different opportunities to meet new people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise meet. So maybe let's say you, I don't know, join like a running group or a pottery class or a dance class or something along those lines. You're going to be meeting a ton of new people.
Yep.
So even when I was like the gym is a really important part of like my daily life, but I do also think about it somewhat as a hobby for me. And I remember the one year I started kind of a hobby on the side of teaching fitness. My sales that year were phenomenal because every single time I'd see somebody,
Yeah.
they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Can you bring a cleanser in tomorrow?"
Yeah.
It just so it really does overall help your business too.
And yeah, and don't look at the hobby as look at it of what can get me the best networking, but
Oh, for
that's a
sure.
huge piece.
Yeah.
Because you're like you said, you get in front of people that you would not have.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you're going to go in there and like be wearing, a shirt that's like what your business is. You're
Yeah.
not. But yeah, you get to meet people. And it just at the end of the day, not even any of these 5, but just having a hobby just makes you more of an interesting person. Like
For
just
sure.
you have other facets to talk about.
Yeah.
If you're a person that you talk with and the only thing you really can have a conversation about is your
work.
business
Yeah.
or work,
Yeah.
you're pretty boring to a lot of people
Yeah.
because unless they are in your profession, which most people, when you work in that profession, you don't always even want to talk about that. So it just makes you more interesting. I had a conversation with someone on LinkedIn the other day all about Mario Kart because he was responding back to something I talked about hobbies, and then I was like, "What character do you like?" And it's just fun. Like we wouldn't have had that conversation if it was just about a random topic. So it makes you a more interesting person
For sure.
is
And
important.
I think it allows more organic relationships to form too. And
Yep.
that's why I never went in and talked about my business. It wasn't until I'd been there for a while and people got to know me and, you're building relationships. It just becomes a natural extension. I think networking in general becomes a natural.
I mean, it's like if you have a child or if you have
Yeah.
a dog, you you go to a dog park, you're meeting
Yeah.
all these kind of people because that hobby, like, and same with kids. Parents just have conversations with other
Yeah,
parents.
yeah,
Like, so
yeah.
your hobbies can be that networking
It's so
thing,
true.
which like, because people just naturally relate. You instantly can see someone. You go to a Yankees baseball game, go Yankees. You're high fiving everyone around you. She's like, no, I don't want to talk
How
about
about the
Yankees.
Eagles, huh?
No, hey, let's not talk about anything. But it just you can instantly relate to
Yeah.
people doing different things, and
Yeah.
it just makes it more fun.
For sure.
So
For sure.
what else? Number 3. Are we at 3?
We're
4?
at 4.
4.
Balance.
Balance.
Which I actually technically don't love the word balance. I like to think more of harmony, but
Yeah.
same thing.
No. Yep. I get it.
Yeah, it is really that the harmony of things, right? If you have, let's say, even music, if you only heard one harmony, like
Yeah.
it just sounds so flat,
Yeah.
right? Music sounds
Yeah.
flat if there's just one note.
Yeah.
It's the I think it's life, right? When you have all these different components that are kind of playing nicely together, it just adds this beautiful melody to your life.
Yep.
So flavor, and it helps you, I think, to, I don't know, just like, let's say be more balanced, but that's
I say it's a little bit of balance, but it is. It is. It's definitely something.
evens you out.
Yep, for sure. And I think what we will talk about at the end of this episode, so stay tuned, is how do you maybe find certain hobbies, and how does a person balance having hobbies in the middle of their day when they don't really control their schedule. So we're going to dive into that a little bit in just a second.
Love that.
5th and final one, personal growth. That's something that obviously helps, right? You just, as a human,
Yes.
the more that you do, the more that you experiment with things, and the more that you are out and about doing things you don't normally do, you become not so one-dimensional.
Yep.
You learn. You get
Yeah.
better. You become a smarter person.
Yeah. I think you get to know yourself too when it comes to when you have hobbies. And so much of personal growth begins with knowing yourself. Like
Yep.
you have to have self-awareness if you want to have self-development.
Yeah.
So that self-awareness piece is everything.
Yep.
And when you do allow yourself to have hobbies, I think, I don't know, you just get to kind of re-meet yourself outside of work, outside of being a mom, outside of
Yep.
fill in the blank title that we wear. It allows you to be Scott, Michaela. And I think that's what hobbies really allow you to do. See
And
yourself.
and so many hobbies. What's interesting about like when you start having hobbies too is so many hobbies actually end up turning into someone's true
Yeah.
passion,
Yep.
which then turns in their whole course, changes their whole course
Yep.
of their life because
So
they're now.
true.
And I've obviously tried to find like the balance in my life of trying not to look at everything like could this be
Yeah.
a potential?
Could this be a
Could I
business?
potentially like? Because the answer is yes. Anything you do in this day and age of the internet
Yeah.
can be a true business.
True.
But also don't stifle that if you actually have suddenly do a random passion or you suddenly do a random hobby and you're like, I really, really enjoy this.
Yeah.
And it's something that and you're not necessarily enjoying. If you find yourself constantly going to your side hustle or
Yeah,
your hobby,
the hobby, yeah.
then maybe it's also telling you something
Yeah.
about just, hey, this is something you really enjoy and figure out how to do it. And then the bonus tip, because it kind of goes along with that, is like problem solving.
Yeah. Helps you problem
Because
solve, yeah.
I know that as I do other things, as I
Mm-hmm.
do other random tasks, it makes me, try things differently and look at things differently. When I talk with a business owner that does nothing what I do, it helps me learn more about my business.
Yep.
When I, do a random hobby that has nothing to do with my business,
Mm-hmm.
because that brain now has that free space, you suddenly are like, that could be interesting, or I could do this, or I could solve that problem better. I found that to be pretty useful.
100%. And I'm trying to think of like an example. Can you think of an example off the top of your head?
Problem solving?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with me, there's tons of times where, for example, with pressure washing, for example, if I do pressure washing or if I randomly am playing the piano and I suddenly learn, if I'm playing, I'm super basic piano player, right? And so when I first learned the regular way to play a chord and I go between all those chords, I say to myself, okay, cool, that's the one way to do it. But then when I started to learn what are called inversions, which are other way to play chords, what it actually taught me is a reminder in my business to say there are multiple ways to do the same thing and don't be so stuck with the only thing that you know.
Ooh,
So
that's good.
like that's kind of how I look at things, like, and so little things like that are that reminder, because right, we can learn a way to do something in our business
yeah.
And that's how we learned it. And we're kind of just like, that's it. No, there are multiple ways to do everything. And the more and more that we can realize that sometimes you go this way and sometimes you go this way. Inversions on a piano, there's not a formula to when you go to a different one. It's just that sometimes that inversion makes more sense in a certain thing.
Yeah.
So it kind of just is kind of the way
good.
the way that I relate to it.
That's good. What are some examples of hobbies, or how can people say, like, okay, how do I know which would be a good hobby for me? I have an idea, but do you have any?
I would say first, the way that I look at it, because I know that struggle is always if you're a business owner or someone listening that obviously has a lot on their plate, is I first try to think about, when do I have space potentially for the hobby?
Yeah.
And then what type of hobbies potentially would work at that time frame, right? It's like if I say I'm a super morning person and I'm happy to wake up at 4 a.m., that's great. But if you wanted your hobby to be shooting basketball, you can't do that at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's like, to a point, you're almost trying to think about, if I, in my case, a lot of where I do my hobbies, other than the miscellaneous times I, sit at the piano, I have to do those at night, kind of when my kids go to bed or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have to think about what's realistic there.
Yeah.
If I want to do it with other people, I can't do it in the middle of the day when everyone else works, if they don't have flexibility in their schedule, right? So that's kind of how I would say first, just if you literally don't know anything you enjoy and you're trying to find a new hobby, maybe first think about it. And think about, your friends. What do your friends do?
Yeah.
It's always more fun to do anything with people.
That's so true.
So start there.
Yeah.
What are some things my friends do, and will I like that? And experiment.
Yeah.
Like we started randomly playing pickleball last year, which no one really even thought about. And it's incredibly fun.
Yeah.
It's growing like crazy.
Yeah.
But that was just because it was like, well, why not? Like, just try it. What's the worst that could happen? You do something, you hate it? Wow.
Now you know.
Do something else.
Yeah. The one thing that came to my mind, too, with this was, think about something that you're lacking right now in your life. Like, maybe you're lacking fun or joy, or you, are lacking a little bit of peace. Think about why do I keep saying habits? Think about hobbies that would maybe give you peace. And that could be, for me, it's lettering or some type of art class. Or if you need more fun, think about things that are, generally more fun.
And you only know those things if you do them, if you experiment. The only reason that you discovered that you found stress relief from lettering is because you did it.
Yep.
So that's why, especially with hobbies, just do tons of different things.
Yeah.
And obviously it's going to also vary if you have a spouse or if you have someone that, try to find hobbies with those people.
Yep.
Because then what you're doing is you're doing hobbies, but you're also getting more quality time with people.
So good.
And you'll enjoy the hobbies more, but you'll be able to now do the hobbies longer because you're not necessarily taking away from your family.
Yep.
So if you have a spouse and you have a family and you realize you only have a little bit of time, think about how you can incorporate all of them in the hobby.
Yeah.
If you want to start exercising more, think about how you can all go for a walk, or you can go outside and all kick a ball around, do something and incorporate other people in it. And then that actually helps the accountability, which is how you get better in all that stuff anyway, because someone is telling you and encouraging you to do it.
Yes.
And you don't feel as much like you're the only motivator that gets you to do that task. It's much easier when your friend invites you to, or your friend texts you and says, are you going to the gym? And you're like, I wasn't gonna, but I don't want to say no. So, yep, see you there in 10 minutes. Bam, now you're at the gym. You wouldn't have.
Accountability
Incorporating
is
people.
That's so good. Figuring out what you potentially need more of in your life, and figuring out how can you include the people that you value and want to spend more time with. And also just trying.
Yep.
Experimenting.
Yep.
That's
and one other side note I'd say, because this is something that I kind of feel like I've gotten to discover, is I've started to really realize that there are triggers in my life that get me in different moods, right? Some are creative, some are peace, some are just flow, whatever it is. Start to really jot down when you're feeling really good one morning, or you're feeling amazing in the afternoon and feeling incredibly creative. Start to pay attention to what got you there.
Exactly.
Because so many times, if you're suddenly looking for more creativity, if you don't know how to get that, you're always just going to be hoping that it springs up, versus your brain is wired to pay attention to what you do.
Yeah.
So like I think about it all the time, and I encourage people all the time too, that if I'm in a miserable mood, I'm trying to think about, did I do a bunch of things today that put me in a miserable mood?
Yeah.
Did I not sleep good? Maybe I didn't do this. Maybe I didn't do that. Maybe I need to rearrange things. And you'd be surprised if you actually take notes of when you're in certain moods, how interesting. I didn't even realize it. But every single time
Yep.
I do this,
Yep.
I have 2 hours of fantastic productivity.
Right.
Well, then you need to do that as often as possible.
Yes.
And then the other point with this is, how do you as a person, if you're saying, I love that idea, it would be great if I could take a walk during the day or whatever, but I work for somebody. I don't even really have that freedom. I would say it's worth 2 things. First of all, have a conversation.
I was just going to say.
And
Absolutely.
But more importantly, here's how you'll get the opportunity to potentially, let's say you're not working from home or something and you're literally in an office and you want to be able to take a walk every once in a while. Try to be able to prove to someone when you do get that opportunity for that you become more productive and you do better work and you're a more pleasant person. I don't mean be miserable until you get your walk and be like a little kid. Like, don't be a brat. But I mean, it's important because if, we've talked a lot about in the last, couple of years because of COVID and people working at home, and I'm more productive at home and all that. And some of it is this reason alone, that they have started to have a midday walk that they never had. They've started to have a midday coffee conversation with their wife.
Yes.
So if you now are forced to go back into the office all the time, just try to think about how you can maybe somehow incorporate that and maybe share, hey, when we were gone for a little bit, one thing I found super valuable was this. Would you be okay with me taking that? I really feel like it'll benefit me. If they actually see that it is versus you just being, lazy and being like, hey, I need to walk every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes. Like that's unrealistic.
Correct.
But if you can really know that your triggers are and people start to see that it matters, I promise your boss will probably want to see the best part of you.
For sure.
Versus just saying, I need you to sit there for 8 hours, but know that 5.5 of them you're doing work, the other 2.5 you're miserable.
Yep.
Like, so really think about those triggers, but writing them down, I feel like has been huge for me.
Yeah. Because it leads back to that self-awareness piece.
Yep.
Which is absolutely crucial. So this is good.
Yeah. So get a hobby, all right? And maybe
Yeah.
your hobby is watching YouTube and creating and consuming content. That's fine too. But
sure.
just if you're creative, don't consume so much that you don't create,
Yeah.
because that can be a problem too.
For sure.
But-
That analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Comparison.
Yep.
Yeah. But we
For
would
sure.
love to know too, like, what are your hobbies? Because this would probably be a great space for us to give each other ideas.
Yes. And network, maybe, like we said.
Yeah.
Maybe there's people watching this. Maybe there's people watching some clips on LinkedIn. Maybe there's different people that are local.
Yeah.
And they also love fishing. And you're right down the road and you're also an entrepreneur with a busy lifestyle. Find some people. The network
Love
thing is
this.
real.
For sure.
And it will really, really help you. I think you'll see a huge benefit in your life if you step away from your work every once in a while and do something else.
Yeah, I love this.
'Kay.
Yeah, we would love to know, what are your hobbies? Maybe what's one you want to start, and anything that stood out to you, any aha moments. We always love reading those because it's important for us to know, like, okay, what lands?
Yep. I'm going to play pickleball. See ya.
I'm going to go let her. All right, bye, guys.